Okay, let's set the scene. It's the late 1970s in this kind of drab industrial town in England called Northampton. Four young guys get together, and in just four really short, explosive years, they somehow managed to create the blueprint for a whole global subculture. We're talking about Bauhaus. But here's the thing. To really get their impact, you first have to realize just how much people, especially the critics, hated them. We're talking sheer hostility. When their first album In the Flat Field came out, the British music press didn't just dislike it. No, they absolutely despised it. The Enemy, the New Musical Express, just savaged it with this now famous line. People thought they were a joke, calling them a hip Black Sabbath. So that's the big question we're going to tackle here. How on earth does a band that gets reviews like that, a band from a town that's literally famous for making shoes, how do they become one of the most influential post-punk bands ever? And, kind of by accident, the architects of Goth. It doesn't really add up, does it? All right, so the answer starts back in Northampton, 1978. And right from the jump, it's all about this huge contradiction. I mean, it's baked right into their name, into the very DNA of the band. So just look at the name Bauhaus. On one hand, you have the German Bauhaus school of art. Think minimalism, clean lines, function over form, super serious, very structured. But the band? They were the exact opposite. They were all about flamboyant theatrics, glam rock swagger, and this dark, over-the-top spectacle. And really, it's that clash, that tension between stark modernism and wild excess that became the engine for their entire sound. And how they even got together? Well, it's just as unlikely. You've got the core guys who played instruments. They'd known each other forever, played in cover bands, you know the deal. But their frontman, this guy Peter Murphy, he was just a friend from art school working in a print factory. He'd never written a single lyric. He'd never even sung in a band before. They hired him for one reason and one reason only. He had the right look. That was it. His kind of gaunt, super charismatic vibe was exactly what they were looking for. So get this. Just 6 weeks after forming, 6 weeks, this totally unlikely group walks into a tiny studio. And in one single 6-hour session, they record a song that would become the absolute ground zero for an entire movement. It was a total accident, really, that turned into a masterpiece. That song was Bela Lugosi's Dead, and its runtime, 9 minutes and 37 seconds. I mean, think about that. This was the era of 3-minute punk songs, all designed to get on the radio. Releasing a debut single that's almost 10 minutes long, that's basically commercial suicide. It was just this epic, sprawling, atmospheric thing that sounded like absolutely nothing else out there. So how did they even make a sound like that? Well, the foundation was super unusual. It wasn't rock and roll. It was the spacious, bass-heavy rhythm of dub reggae. Then you've got Daniel Ash's guitar, which isn't really playing riffs. It's just creating these shimmering, kind of jagged textures. The secret ingredient, though, a broken echo unit that gave the whole track this haunting, almost alien atmosphere. And then, floating over all of it, you have Peter Murphy's deep, theatrical vocal, and they captured it in one single raw take. So yeah, Bela Lugosi's Dead basically became ground zero for a whole new movement. It wasn't a hit on the radio or anything, but if you're in the dark, sweaty alternative clubs in the UK back then, it was everything. It created this whole new sound that was all about mood and atmosphere instead of catchy choruses. And just like that, Gothic rock was born. With that one song as their calling card, Bauhaus just launched into this brief but, man, incredibly prolific career. It was just this 4-year explosion of creativity, popularity, and a ton of internal pressure that, well, eventually led to a pretty sudden collapse. I mean, just look at this pace. An album every single year. And each one pushed their sound in a totally new direction. You go from the really raw, jagged sound of their debut to the more experimental, more polished stuff later on. They were just constantly evolving, never standing still for a second. And you know what? The world started to notice. Their first album just barely scraped into the charts at number 72. But by their third album, The Sky's Gone Out, they were a top 3 band in the UK. They were even on top of the pops. They had all this momentum, this massive cult following was growing, and it really felt like mainstream success was right there knocking at the door. And then, right at the absolute peak of their success, it all just imploded. It was sudden, it was shocking, and honestly, it had this sense of high drama that was, well, perfectly on brand for them.
So here's how it went down. They were recording their fourth album, and Peter Murphy gets seriously sick with pneumonia. While he's gone, the rest of the band just takes over. They're writing songs, they're even singing lead vocals on stuff. So when Murphy finally comes back, he feels like a guest in his own band. You can imagine the tension, right? That creative friction just boiled over and they split up. Get this, 1 week before their final album was even released. The end was just as abrupt and explosive as their beginning. But the end of Bauhaus really wasn't the end of the story. Not at all. It was more like a creative big bang. The band itself was gone, but the members scattered, and their musical DNA just spread out everywhere, continuing to shape and influence alternative music for decades. And it was a pretty clean break, really. The band split right down the middle into two camps. You had the instrumental section, Daniel Ash, David J., and Kevin Haskins. They all stuck together. First, they were a band called Tones on Tail, and then, more famously, Love and Rockets. And Peter Murphy? He went off on his own, starting a more experimental, kind of introspective solo career. And what's really remarkable is that they all found major success. I mean, Love and Rockets had this massive top 3 hit in America with So Alive, a song that kind of took that Bauhaus dark glamour and made it perfect for mainstream radio. At the very same time, Peter Murphy's solo song Cuts You Up was topping the US alternative charts, becoming a huge modern rock anthem. It just proved that the creative fire of Bauhaus was definitely still burning, just, in a couple of different places. Meanwhile, the actual legend of Bauhaus just kept growing, fueled by these tense reunions and absolutely legendary live shows. And if you want to talk about their commitment to theatrics, look no further than Coachella in 2005. Peter Murphy comes out to perform their most famous song, Bela Lugosi's Dead, while hanging completely upside down from the lighting rig. It's truly one of the most iconic moments in that festival's entire history. So in the end, their shadow is just so long and enduring. That atmospheric, textured guitar sound, it directly inspired generations of bands, from Jane's Addiction to Interpol. Their stark black and white visual style literally became the uniform for an entire subculture. There's no getting around it. Bauhaus is a complex, deeply influential, and absolutely essential piece of modern rock history. Which brings us all the way back to that first question. So were they the godfathers of goth? Yeah, they were, almost by accident. But maybe that label is just too small for them. When you think about their mix of dub, funk, glam, and art rock, maybe the better question is this. Were Bauhaus simply the ultimate post-punk band? A group that took everything that came after punk and just built something so much stranger, so much more ambitious, and honestly, more beautiful than anyone could have ever seen coming.